Continuing on with a little bit of a reading from Esoteric Psychology by Alice A. Bailey, wrapping up the second to last section on the Introductory Remarks. This little section is called the 7 Rays Enumerated. It's just going to go over the names of each of the 7 rays and their basic qualities and the ruling planets, if there is a determined ruling planet for that. Some of them are up for debate. And then there's just one more section, last part 4, and then we get into chapter 2, certain questions and their answers. We answer these questions. What is the soul and its nature? What is the origin, goal, purpose, and plan of the soul? Can the fact of the soul be proved? And so on. But first, to wrap this first section up, let's learn about the 7 rays. All right, section 3, the 7 rays enumerated. As part of the initial plan, the one life saw expansion, and the 7 eons or emanations came forth from the central vortex and actively repeated the earlier process in all its details. They too came into manifestation, and in the work of expressing active life, qualified by love, and limited by an outward phenomenal appearance, they swept into a secondary activity and became the 7 builders, the 7 sources of life, and the 7 rishis of all the ancient scriptures. They are the original psychic entities imbued with the capacity to express love, which involves the concept of duality, for the loving and the loved, the desiring and the desired, must here be posited, and to emerge from subjective being into objective becoming. We call these 7 by various names as follows. And just jumping in really quickly to comment on that concept of how the capacity to express love involves the concept of duality, because we were given first the capacity to love, which also implies the capacity to not express love. So this is where you see the beginnings of separation from our source, the one true source, which is love. So in part of the process of stepping down consciousness, that first dual nature was to have that separation of love from love so that you can experience that which is loving and that which is to be loved, and the concept of desire and all of those things, because when you are all things, you don't know those distinctions, right? So that's the first stepping down of consciousness. And then these are the various names of the 7 emanations or rays. First is the Lord of Power or Will. This life wills to love and uses power as an expression of divine beneficence. For his body of manifestation, he uses that planet for which the sun is regarded as the esoteric substitute. That's the Lord of Power or Will. Second, the Lord of Love, Wisdom, who is the embodiment of pure love, is regarded by esotericists as being as close to the heart of the solar logos as was the beloved disciple close to the heart of the Christ of Galilee. This life instills into all forms the quality of love with its more material manifestation of desire, and is the attractive principle in nature and the custodian of the law of attraction, which is the life demonstration of pure being. This Lord of Love is the most potent of the 7 rays because he is on the same cosmic ray as the solar deity. He expresses himself primarily through the planet Jupiter, which is his body of manifestation. So one point here, it says that this is the attractive principle in nature, which is the custodian of the law of attraction, because it's the essence of pure being, and what people say about the piece that was missing from The Secret and the law of attraction, all those videos, is that it's not just the ask, believe, receive concept of just positive thinking. It's that pure intent, that pure will, that pure body nature that actually magnetizes you based on pulling upon these energies, right, which would be harnessing the energy of the planet Jupiter, which in astrology, that camp, they know that Jupiter is the lucky planet. So it makes sense, right, that it would help you to attract and to manifest using that energy. Moving on, number 3. the Lord of active intelligence. His work is more closely linked to matter, and he works in cooperation with the Lord of the second ray. He is the motivating impulse in the initial work of creation. The planet Saturn is his body of expression within the solar system, and through the medium of matter, which beneficently obstructs and hinders, he provides humanity with a vast field of experiment and experience. Planet Saturn. So this is the one who obstructs and hinders. Saturn, I believe that's the one that rules Capricorn. And so that energy from the planet Saturn, we just had Saturn go direct. So planets are sometimes in retrograde or they're direct. So their energy is closer or nearer to the Earth. Not to get into too much of that, but the effects were strongly for me. So for example, I'm a Capricorn moon, which rules my emotions and how I show up in relationships. So the Capricorn energy and then in life, so it's going to cause this Saturnian, just like Pluto, it has this disruptive force where it restricts and holds back. They call it like the father energy. So it's for your own good. That energy restriction holds things back from you so that you can strive. And then you have this Saturn return, which they also say is after age 30, which is like the cycle of that planetary orbit. After age 30, you experience your Saturn return, which is your first rebirth process, also like kind of in the Pluto cycle. None of this makes sense other than the fact that you get your rewards after a Saturnian cycle. And this is the same, in the same way, explaining how that happens as one of the first 3 rays split down, because that's the first energy of the Father stepping itself down into what it does. It provides that dynamic of restriction for future benefit. Learning to appreciate, learning to earn, learning to concretize something in the physical. So this is the one that is linked to matter. Out of the first 3, which are more geared towards love and the emotions and the unseen, this is the one that brings everything more physical and concrete with the Saturnian energy. I hope that makes sense. Continuing on, I should like to point out here that when I speak in terms of personality and perforce employ the personal pronoun, I must not be accused of personalizing these great forces. I speak in terms of entity, of pure being, and not in terms of the human personality. But the handicap of language persists, and in teaching those who think in terms of the lower concrete mind, those whose intuition is dormant or only manifesting in flashes, I am compelled to speak in parables and use the language of word symbols. Let me point out also that all statements which I make are in relation to our particular planet and couched in terms that can be understood by the humanity which our planet has produced. The work as I outline it constitutes only a fraction of the work undertaken by these beings. They each have their own purpose and radius of influence, and as our Earth is not one of the 7 sacred planets, nor the body of manifestation of one of the basic 7 rays, they have purposes and activities in which our Earth plays only a minor part. This is just expressing that there's actually more to it than our solar system, more to it than our, the 7, the planets that we know aren't all representative as the 7 builders of the 7 rays. Just a few of them, and they're part of their own larger orbits and radius, and they're connected to these other larger energies. So it's bigger than you. It's bigger than me. That's all it's saying. So the 4th ray, the Lord of harmony, beauty, and art. The main function of this being is the creation of beauty as an expression of truth through the free interplay of life and form, basing the design of beauty upon the initial plan as it exists in the mind of the solar logos. The body of manifestation of this life is not revealed, but the activity emanating from it produces that combination of sounds, colors, and word music that expresses, through the form of the ideal, that which is the originating idea. This 4th Lord of creative expression will resume activity upon the earth about 600 years hence, though already the first faint impress of his influence is being felt, and the next century will see a reawakening of creative art in all its branches. Fifth, the Lord of concrete knowledge and science. This is a great life in close touch with the mind of the creative deity, just as the Lord of the second ray is in close touch with the heart of that same deity. His influence is great at this time, though not as potent as it will be later. Science is a psychological unfoldment, and man, due to this ray influence, is only entering into its real work. His influence is waxing in power, just as the influence of the sixth Lord is waning. So concrete knowledge and science is going to get stronger, just as beauty and art and harmony, music and art and creation for the sake of expressing truth. Where right now you could say that, so we had our kind of artistic revolution years ago in those different ages, and you would see different paintings that were so detailed and music that was so intricate and, just very divine expressions of talent and ideas. But then there was kind of a different resurgence of this kind of, and Sally, who I met through that other channel, Sorting Myself Out, she could actually speak to this really well because she was actually going through art school and talked about how they really wanted to push the concepts of what you create and kind of this whole idea of abstract art. And you could say music these days is very abstract too. We have all these different styles and things that are becoming they're not representative of a truth that is the combination of sounds, colors, and word music that expresses the ideal, right? It expresses something far less than that. It expresses separation and lack and perpetuates lower consciousness, I guess you could say. But there's going to be, this energy is waxing in power, just as the Lord of concrete knowledge and science, which is science that is actually much more psychological, like he's talking about right here with the esoteric piece of psychology, which focuses on the soul and the divine. So 6 is the Lord of devotion and idealism. This is the one that's waning. This solar deity is a peculiar and characteristic expression of the quality of the solar logos. Forget not that in the great scheme of the universal universe, not just our universe, our solar logos is as differentiated and distinctive in quality as are any of the sons of men. This ray force, with the second ray, is a true and vital expression of the divine nature, a militant focusing upon the ideal, a one-pointed devotion to the intent of the life urge, and a divine sincerity are the qualities of this Lord, and set their impress upon all that is found within his body of manifestation. Advanced esotericists debate as to whether Mars is or is not the planet through which he manifests. You must remember that only a few of the planets are the bodies of expression of the Lords of the Rays. There are 10 planets of expression, to use the term employed by the ancient rishis, and only 7 ray lives are regarded as the builders of the system. The great mystery, which is finally revealed in the higher initiations, is the relation of a ray to a planet. Therefore, seek not full information at this time. The influence of the sixth Lord is now passing out. To sum this one up, they say a lot of this one is the devotion of devout religious groups, so like Christianity, and there's a section in here when it gets into all the fun stuff where it talks about the lower representation of a ray and the higher representation of the consciousness attached to a certain ray type. And this would be, like it says, the single militant, one-pointed focus of devotion and dedication to an ideal, an idealism. So that ideal is that Jesus is God, and that's the representation, the one truth, and we devote ourselves wholeheartedly to this concept, this idea, with a militant force, so we can not accept anything other than that, but we will give ourselves fully to this concept. This was an energy that was imbued upon the planet by the Lord of Devotion and Idealism, and it was strong and strengthened for a time, because it talks about the different rays passing in and out of humanity, just as in the first parts of this book it talks about when you see the different ages that humanity has gone through in consciousness, there's been a specific movement in the planets, and the influence of these rays and the planets that rule them correlate to those passing times. And it says, just as harmony and art and beauty, music, those kinds of things, and concrete knowledge and science and psychology are coming forward or rising up, waxing, like the moon, this one-pointed devotion energy is waning. So the people that are heavily on this ray are moving out of incarnation, I guess you could say. Seventh, the Lord of ceremonial order and magic is now coming into power and is slowly but surely making his pressure felt. His influence is most potent upon the physical plane, for there is a close numerical interrelation between, for instance, the Lord of the seventh ray and the seventh plane, the physical, just as the seventh root race will see complete conformity to a perfect expression of law and order. This ray of order and its incoming is partially responsible for the present tendency in world affairs toward governmental dictatorship and the imposed control of a central governing body. It may be of value here if I give you the following statements as to the activity or non-activity of the rays, begging you to bear in mind that this statement refers only to our Earth and its evolutions. It gives a little bit of a chart here, talking about when the rays were predominantly brought into manifestation. Ray 1 says not in manifestation right now. I don't know if it says here, but earlier in the book and a little bit later, because I peeked a little bit, Ray 1, so that's the ray of will and power. So this is kind of the destroyer, the ability to see things and to destroy it. To live on that ray, it says, is too powerful. No one has the, or at the time this was written, there wasn't anyone in incarnation who could handle that power to use it. Oh, it's actually going to say it here, so I'll read it later. Ray 2 is in manifestation since 1575 AD. Ray 3 in manifestation since 1425 AD. Ray 4 is to come slowly into manifestation after 2025 AD. Ray 5 in manifestation since 1775 AD. Ray 6 passing rapidly out of manifestation. This was that devotion. It began to pass out in 1625 AD. And Ray 7 in manifestation since 1675 AD. These are, of course, all lesser cycles within the influence of the sign of Pisces. You will see that 4 rays are in manifestation at this time, the 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. The question arises here, how does it happen that we find people in incarnation on all the rays at practically the same time? The reason is that, as you can easily see, the 4th is beginning to approach and the 6th is passing out, which puts 6 of the rays in the position of having their egos in manifestation. There are, however, very few of the 4th ray egos on our Earth at this time, and a very large number of 6th ray egos, for it will be about 200 years before all the 6th ray egos pass out of incarnation. As to the 1st ray egos, there are no pure first ray types on the planet. All so-called first ray egos are on the first sub-ray of the 2nd ray, which is in incarnation. A pure first ray ego in incarnation at this time would be a disaster. There is not sufficient intelligence and love in the world to balance the dynamic will of an ego on the ray of the destroyer. So that it kind of says it there. But thinking about that in terms of people, I thought it was interesting to say that so each ray type dominates, represents a dominant energy force that's kind of driving our lives. We have, personality ray, soul ray, all these things. But just think of it this way. There's a dominant energy, a planetary energy, stepping down consciousness to the planets, down into you. And so I am predominantly someone who lives on whatever ray type. Now, there's very few people right now who live on the ray of expressing themselves and their divinity through the form of art for the sake of expressing truth. to speak consciousness through their art. But it says that they're moving into incarnation. So we're going to see an influx or rise in people who are talented at articulating truth in an art, one of these beautiful art forms. Right now it says there's a majority of people who are on a sixth ray dominant, mindset, which is that of that one-pointed devotion to a cause or to a belief system. And so if there's a bunch of people who incarnated at a certain time who follow that or driven by that energy through their lifetime, they're driven by that energy, it would make sense that there's so many zealous religious people right now. And then as their life spans, we have a human life cycle of, less than 100 years, right? So it makes sense that it's saying within 200 years, as one comes in, another one passes out of incarnation. And that's how we move through a dominant human ray, like a humanity, to be on a certain wavelength, you could say. Like, why was this age the awakening of art, and this age the rise of religion, and this age the rise of war? It's saying that this can't be, no one can be particularly pure first ray, because that's the ray of destruction through God force. Like they say, God can destroy something because he has the omnipotence to see everything and be unbiased. But as it is now, that's not in manifestation. But the other six ray types are. And it's really cool how it talks about how they came in and passed out of incarnation. And it's happening right now with the fourth and fifth and sixth rays. They're kind of crossing in and out. To finish this up here, just as the human family has a relation to the planetary logos of our Father, which is best expressed by stating that it constitutes his heart and brain, so does the sum total of analogous evolutions within the entire solar system constitute the heart and brain of the solar logos. Intelligent activity and love are the outstanding characteristics of a developed son of God, whilst their lower reflections, sex and desire, are the characteristics of the average man and the undeveloped sons of God. These 7 living qualified emanations from the central vortex of force are composed of untold myriads of energy units, which are inherently and innately aspects of life, endowed with quality and capable of appearance. Below the human, the combination of these 3 produces conscious response to the environment, regarding the environment as composed of the sum total of all lives, qualities, and appearances. This is just saying that all of this makes up all the different, rainbow flavors of humanity and who we are and all the unique attributes that each person possesses, because they're sprinkled with different mixes of these ray influences. And it's a mixed bag. And then how we each choose to express and interact with our environment as a way, as a result of that is also directly correlated to these influences and qualities and varieties and emanations, all that stuff. The synthesis of the 7 rays or emanations of the deity. They produce in the human kingdom a self-conscious awareness, and in the superhuman world a synthetic inclusiveness. All human monads, carried into manifestation by the will and desire of some ray lord, are part of his body of manifestation. Potentially they express his quality and appear phenomenally according to the point in evolutionary expression which has been reached. I read that again. Potentially they express his quality and appear phenomenally according to the point in evolutionary expression which has been reached. Quote, as he is, so are we in this world, but only as yet, potentially. The goal of evolution being to make the potential into the real and the latent into the expressed. The work of the esotericist is just this very thing, to bring out of latency the hidden quality. Isn't that awesome? The work of the esotericist is to bring out of latency the hidden quality. So once we are aware of the rays and the ray influence, we can understand our strengths, our gifts, the influences that act upon us. Once we understand better the connection of astrology and the planetary movements and how it interacts with our birth chart, we can unlock the blueprint of your soul, which is your triggered and automatic responses, and then kind of shift and move and learn how to activate and work with the energy of the certain period and the time, and then act in line with your ray type, mixed with your soul ray and your personality and everything we get into, but just kind of having that awareness so that you then operate consciously. That's what it breaks down to. Your latent potential, which you just don't know how to act upon because you're not really, we kind of just go with the flow, or we go with what we observe, or we're taught that it's, your nature versus your nurture, but we don't really go as deep into our own nature. We go into our upbringing, our environment, the people that we interact with, our socioeconomic status, all that stuff, all that physical stuff. That's why Bailey and these teachings say that once we get into the study of the soul, and that Pluto and Scorpio generation also says this is a generation where we decide consciously to live as the soul. That means as our powerful being. Then we can do the work of the esotericists and make that which is latent, expressing that hidden quality, our hidden qualities. All right. I feel like I kind of, yammered and stammered a little bit through that. The Great Invocation here, which is what we start and stop every reading with. I will read it for you here. From the point of light within the mind of God, let the light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. If you want to check out this book for free online, I have a link to the publisher's website, Lucis Press, and it's their website. You can read all the Bailey books for free, but you should still purchase them to support her work and then read along. All right, thanks for watching. I'm going to finish this off, section 4, in just another video. This is about 30 minutes. Take care. Thanks for watching.